We are very pleased to hold this meeting, although it's a virtual meeting on Usher syndrome. It was planned to occur a year and a half ago, but now we are able to get a very good crowd of speakers and attendees. It's a sequel that actually does conclude a very big program that was funded by a national initiative called Invest into the Future, that is supporting translational projects on any type of issues that can really make a difference in the management and potentially therapies for very devastating diseases. This started actually many years ago when Christine and I started to collaborate on issues relating to the dual impairment, visual impairment and auditory impairment, and taking many initiatives in this field. Usher syndrome has always been at the core of Christine's research and that of my clinical activities, and we decided to join effort between at the time the Institut de la Vision and now the newborn Institut de l'Audition, which is part of Pasteur Institute, trying to really bring together clinicians and scientists working on this very severe condition. Around us, it was a French program. We got the several groups that were able to provide a lot of input on that, and as you will see, this spans from very basic biology to human sciences and sociology and psychology. So it's really trying to address this very complex disorder that has such a strong impact on the daily life of families and patients with any possible approach. Also trying to get into developing new therapies, and you will hear a lot of achievements that occurred within this program. But more importantly, this symposium is also bringing experts and patients from all over the world that have been working on this disease also, and you will hear hopefully a lot of breakthroughs and at least a lot of progress made in this field. But I will have a shorter introduction a bit later, and I think Christine was really being the driving force behind all the research on Usher nationally and internationally is going also to introduce this symposium. Christine.
Many thanks, José, for this very nice and very large introduction on the various aspects of the research. So, hello everyone, and a warm welcome to you all. I am very pleased that we can hold this meeting, although obviously we would have preferred it to be in person. The discovery of the first causal gene for Usher syndrome more than 25 years ago really opened up the field of research into the molecular physiology of the auditory sensory organ, the cochlea, and the pathophysiology of Usher syndrome. I think that we have covered a great deal of ground since, and this is a source of tremendous satisfaction to us all. We all have high hopes that this international symposium, which will provide us with a unique opportunity, for exchanges. It will be a time for sharing knowledge between scientific domains, as José already mentioned, hearing and balance on the one hand and vision on the other hand. But the objective of the meeting extends well beyond that. It will provide opportunity to share reflection and tools that should accelerate the advance in knowledge and therapeutic innovation. It will highlight the importance of understanding multisensory modal sensoriality, which should help to improve the diagnosis and the management of patients. It should boost the domain, especially with respect to treatment, by setting up, I hope, more collaborative works. I wish you all an excellent symposium with many fruitful interaction. José, the floor is now yours for presentation of the Light for Deaf research project on Usher syndrome.
So now we'll have the introductory presentation of a project and also welcome addresses for very important partners internationally.
Good morning, bonjour. We are very pleased to welcome you for this very important meeting at the conclusion of a major project funded by the National Agency for Research and the Invest into the Future operation. It's called Light for Deaf. It's trying to combine research on vision and hearing in the context of Usher syndrome, bringing together many institutions across the country as part also of a more international network. We are dealing with a disease that combines two of the most severe impairment that people can think of, blindness and deafness. The numbers of hearing impairment have affected people across the world are in the range of 460 million as of a few years ago, and vision impairment numbers are quite close in the range of 285 million people. We know that these numbers are due to double in the next 20 years. Usher syndrome is a genetic disease that combines both visual and hearing impairments, starting with hearing and then vision. 3 types of the disease, USH1, USH2, and USH3, with more severe phenotypes in USH1 as compared to the others. Many genes have been identified over the past many years, and more to come. And it's very important to be able to characterize the integration of all these gene defects. The first gene was identified by Petit more than 25 years ago, and this really opened the field. We know a lot, but there are a lot of things we still don't know, and this was the scope of the project, and obviously there is more to do in the future. Understanding the biology of the disease, the gene defects, the animal models, the function of the proteins, correlate that with the stages of the disease, trying to understand the implication of multisensory impairment, trying to develop new therapies, corrective gene therapies, with the major issue of the size of the gene that you have to bring into a vector, development of gene-independent approaches, and the ability to demonstrate the therapeutic benefit are key issues. The project was trying also to tackle the disease from many angles, understanding the disease, developing new guidelines, new protocols, teaching about the condition and the way to manage it, developing new methods for diagnosis and follow-up of patients, developing new models, and importantly, assessing the effect at the cortical level and not only at the peripheral level. Developing rehabilitation strategies that include the vestibular impairment, developing new therapies, and you'll see a lot of that, and very importantly, because this disease has a lot of impact on daily activities, sociological and psychological management of Usher patients. So the consortium was trying to work around building cohorts, developing new technologies, understanding, and innovating. The cohort what we were able to form with several centers involved comprises now more than 150 patients, and you see here the split between the gene defects that have been identified in this patient. As part of the project, it was possible to develop, thanks to the team of Petit, a tool that enables to detect the gene defect in the very vast majority of patients. We also were able to follow cohorts of patients, for example, here with USH1B, myosin 7A mutation, showing the correlation between the morphological assessment and also a functional assessment over the course of time. We also were able to develop innovative methods to visualize the retinal defect, and this is using adaptive optics, a technology derived from astronomy where you can see individual cells in the retina. You'll hear also about many neural tests developed in the field of hearing at the Institut d'Audition. Importantly, the modeling of the disease that started prior to the project but continued to demonstrate that there is a commonality between the effect of the mutations, both in the cochlea and in the vision. In the retina, especially the role of the calyceal processes that are processes along the photoreceptor outer segment that are mutated, the ability to understand better the effect in the cochlea, the ability to demonstrate the interaction between protein both at the retina and the cochlear level, and the creation of 12 new animal models of Usher disease. Just a very important work that was done during the consortium that is just about to be published, showing that the proteins involved in Usher play a key role in motor movement that are aligning the photoreceptors towards the light in the eye, thus improving the capture of light and the efficiency of light, and can probably explain also why patients start with visual defect very early in the disease. The focus on therapies was also relying on many models that were developed and the ability to test in these many models. Because the gene defect is very large, in many cases the gene is above the size of what could fit into AAV. It was very difficult to fit that into most of the vectors that are used, so it was important to develop ways to create new vectors, but also to test them. And the consortium has developed mouse models, iPS cells that are derived from the skin of a patient that can model the disease in vitro, studies in macaques and in pigs that are still ongoing to develop the best model to evaluate therapies. And the replacement gene therapies were developed as part of the consortium. You'll hear also from many people during the meeting about new approaches like dual vectors, for example. And in parallel, we developed gene-independent approaches like neuroprotection and optogenetics. Among the achievements, it was possible to develop gene therapies for hearing impairment in USH1 animal models, to develop also a very good rescue of the auditorial cell synaptopathy with clarion defects in USH3, and also to demonstrate the possibility to protect against oxidative stress in USH1. You'll hear all about that in the next few days. Recently, we demonstrated the ability to use optogenetics to restore some vision in patients affected with retinitis pigmentosa that is fully applicable to Usher syndrome. This was demonstrated with a combination therapy of gene therapy, a medical device, and rehabilitation. And this paper published in Nature Medicine showed the ability of a patient to regain some form vision, and this was measured at the cortical level to really demonstrate the correlation. In parallel, groups of the consortium, a group of 7, have been able to study also the imbalance disorders, and we have developed a real-life naturalistic environment to test the impact of Usher syndrome in mobility in a street lab, using also a virtual environment, and to study the impact of Usher in mobility and movement perception in patients affected with Usher. In parallel, development of games for vestibular disorder and assessment of the vestibular disorders have been performed by the group, and you'll see a lot of these results upcoming. The group of Christine Petit and Paul Avant will talk to you about the central effects of Usher syndrome, directly resulting from a mutation and from also the peripheral impairment. And you'll hear very important work conducted with Sandrine Verlin, sociologist and psychologist, on the effect of Usher syndrome and the impact of psychological and sociological approaches for the disease, especially the issues around communication, the issues about imbalance, and the importance of holistic care, taking into account the patient experience and family experience. So we have done a lot during these 4 years. More to come. We'll hear from many people across the world that have contributed massively to the field. We'll hear also about the role of patients and patient associations like Foundation Fighting Blindness, which just had a wonderful symposium on Usher 1B not long ago, and Claire Gartman will talk about that. We still have a lot to do to develop more animal models, especially large animal models, better vectors, better understanding of the natural history and the outcome measures, integrating the multisensory dimension of the disease, and also integrating always patient expertise and perspective at all stages. So we are very happy to welcome you. Christine will start with a wonderful keynote lecture, but you'll hear many things from all of the stakeholders dealing with this disease. And with no further ado, I'm pleased to introduce several of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So we are now pleased to introduce a few guests that are really going to speak, to give more perspective on the project from beyond what we have done within this symposium. So I think I see Isabelle, who's going to moderate the session with a few more people, but I mean, we have now Krista Vazy, who is going to be the first, followed by Christina Fasser and Claire Gerfman.
Yes. So thank you, and this is a pleasure to be here, and at the beginning of these exciting days. I think I was told to first introduce Professor Petit, who is a professor at Collège de France as a chair in genetics.
We have first. We have Christa Vasi who is speaking first. So
sorry.
Christa Vasi is first. The session is after Christa Vasi, Christina Fasser, and Carl Gaffman. So Christa, if you could unmute and get started. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sahel. Thank you. My name is Christa Vasi, and I'm the Executive Director of the Usher Syndrome Coalition, and I want to thank you all for inviting us to participate. The coalition is so pleased to partner in the 2021 International Usher Info Symposium. The coalition was founded in 2008 at a time when it was very difficult for a family diagnosed with Usher syndrome to connect with others who understood their challenges. This was also a time where the few researchers working on Usher syndrome were often working in isolation. The coalition was born out of the need to bridge the gap between those researchers working tirelessly towards treatments and the families and individuals living with this condition. The coalition also serves to foster collaboration between the scientists themselves. This is why we're so thrilled to be a part of this event. And based on the outcome of past international symposiums on Usher syndrome, we're confident that this gathering will allow for a number of new ideas, new collaborative projects, and ultimately progress towards treatments. I actually have a folder on my computer which includes the details of the first formal meeting of Usher syndrome scientists organized in 2008. From that small conference with 17 people discussing the state of Usher syndrome research over breakfast in Iowa to this virtual meeting bringing together 340 people from 24 countries and 5 continents, this community, including the scientists and those living with Usher syndrome, has become an unstoppable force. So on behalf of the Usher Syndrome Coalition, I can't wait to see what breakthroughs emerge from this forum. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think now we have Christina Fasser, who has been leading Retina International for, I think, almost 30 to 40 years, and is still behind the scene and actually also many times active on that. A wonderful, inspiring person in the field of retinal research and beyond. So Christina, I hope you can unmute and get your video.
Thank you very much, Jose, for your kind words. It's flattering, but I think we are in Retina International. We're working for many years. It's nearly 50 in the meantime. Usher syndrome was always a very important task, and I'm very pleased to see how the field has developed from the time where it was just the lost case to have Usher syndrome, and also for the doctors and scientists, it was very difficult to approach these people and to say the parents, your child might be deafblind. This project and the wonderful results of the last few years and the endeavors work of José and Christine has made it now possible that things are different, that you have a perspective as a patient with Usher syndrome. And I do hope that one of the important things out of this symposium will also go down to those that meet the parents first. And they have to explain to the parent, your child is deaf or severely hearing impaired. And that they are not taking back and thinking, okay, it might be Usher syndrome, but it's too much to tell the patient, the parents, that the child is deaf and might become deafblind. Deaf is enough for the moment. Because now it makes absolutely sense to diagnose very early children with Usher syndrome, because there is a perspective. And it was always the perspective that if you know that the child has already a visual impairment, peripheral vision loss, that for education, this was absolutely important. And I love the holistic approach of this project. And I do hope that this paves the way for future projects, that we don't think only about vision or about hearing, that we think that as a person, we are not only eyes, not only ears, we are all in once, and that we are, as Usher patients, considered as such. So thank you, all of you, for your fantastic work, and I do hope that everybody will enjoy this beautiful meeting to come.
Thank you very much, Christina. As always, very inspiring. So I'm very happy to introduce Claire Gerfman. So Claire Gerfman is newly appointed, 6 months, I think, the scientific director of Foundation Fighting Blindness. So Foundation Fighting Blindness is going to celebrate this year, is celebrating this year the 50 years of existence. It was created at a time when there was just nothing, and Christina remembers that very well. And so much progress has been done. And the foundation is very interested in Usher. By the way, they held a great symposium on USH1B just 3 weeks ago, and people could present just on USH1B, and clearly a lot of non-back work, but more to come, and I hope Claire can introduce what FFB is doing in the field and beyond.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jose, and it's really my honor and privilege to be here today. I think this is a wonderful meeting, and there's a lot of potential collaboration that can come out of it. As he mentioned, I'm the newly appointed Chief Scientific Officer here at the Foundation, and having been in the ophthalmology world my whole career, I've known about the Foundation Fighting Blindness and the urgent mission to fund the best research that will lead to treatments and therapies and innovation around ocular disease as it relates to certainly Usher's, retinitis pigmentosa, and other retinal diseases as well. We have a very urgent mission, as I said, and the work that we're funding across all areas is under the umbrella of gene therapy and cell therapy, with a mission to find those mechanisms and then think about treatments that will actually make a difference in the near term. As Dr. Sahel mentioned, we recently put together a workshop on USH1B specifically that brought together clinicians and scientists and affected individuals to share the innovation, the work that's going on, but also to hear the patient voice. We strongly believe at the Foundation that should absolutely play a role in how we think about treatment and what's really going to make a difference in the world of someone who is visually impaired due to an Usher diagnosis. At the Foundation Fighting Blindness, we're first and foremost, in addition to funding great work as we've been doing for the past 50 years, we're a very patient-centric organization for newly diagnosed individuals to come to us to help. We can help get you in touch with a physician. We can help educate on the potential clinical trials that are happening right now and how you might get enrolled. So much of it is about education and what is really behind a diagnosis and what gene-based therapies are perhaps in the works right now and what gene agnostic approaches are being developed right now. So at the Foundation, we fund work not only in the U.S. where we're based, but all over the world with this clear goal in sight. I hope one day that there's no need because we will have treatments for all these conditions. But Usher is at the core of what we do, particularly the blinding component of Usher syndrome. And it's a pleasure to be here today. I look forward to this conference and would be happy to answer any questions any of you might have about the Foundation Fighting Blindness offline after the meeting. Thanks again for including us.